Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fight or Flight. Today I'll take you through the cold and dark startup procedure for PMDG's Boeing 747 Queen of the Skies 2. I've already generated a flight plan in PFPX for a short flight between Denver International and Phoenix Sky Harbor. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more like this in future. Now let's jump straight into the flight deck and get started. First thing to do is enter the fuel quantity and payload zero fuel weight from the operational flight plan I printed from PFPX. We'll use the lower CDU for all simulator related actions. As the aircraft is completely powered down, you can click and hold the menu button on the CDU to access it. Our release fuel today is 37,991 pounds. Our zero fuel weight is 466,567 pounds, and we'll round that up and enter this into the CDU as 466.6. Now we're ready for the initial cockpit setup. In the real world, the pilot would check the hull number and the circuit breakers on the upper overhead. This isn't a concern for us, so we'll get straight into powering up the aircraft. We'll move to the main overhead left panel and switch the battery on and close the guard. Set standby power to auto and check the bus ties are auto and the hydraulic demand pump selectors are off. Move down to the forward instrument panel. Check the alternate is 37,991 pounds. Our zero fuel weight is 466,567 pounds, and we'll round that up and enter this into the CDU as 466.6. Now we're ready for the initial cockpit setup. In the real world, the pilot would check the hull number and the circuit breakers on the upper overhead. This isn't a concern for us, so we'll get straight into powering up the aircraft. We'll move to the main overhead left panel and switch the battery on and close the guard. Set standby power to auto and check the bus ties are auto and the hydraulic demand pump selectors are off. Move down to the forward instrument panel. Check the alternate flap selector is off, the landing gear handle is down, and check that the flap lever position matches the position shown on the upper ICAS. Now we have the option of connecting external ground power or starting the APU. For simplicity, we'll use the APU. Right-click the selector to on, then right-click again and hold for a second before releasing. We'll have to wait for a minute while the generators come online. When the avail lights come on, we can push the switches to select APU power. We'll turn the nav lights on to signal to the ground crew that the aircraft is powered up. Now we'll set all the IRS selectors to nav.
I'm right next to her. Thank you.
When the avail lights come on, we can push the switches to select APU power. We'll turn the nav lights on to signal to the ground crew that the aircraft is powered up. Now, we'll set all the IRS selectors to nav. The initial cockpit setup is now complete. At this point, your first officer will begin the exterior walk around, and we can start with the CDU pre-flight. Check the ident page on the CDU to confirm everything matches up.
Hi. Thank you. Good evening, ma'am. How are you? I'm doing good.
And then move to the pause init page. We'll take the GPS left position from page 3 and enter that into the current IRS position. In the route page, select Denver as the origin and Phoenix as the destination. I exported the route earlier from PFPX, so I can click Send to simulate loading a company route. After a few seconds, you can load the route into the FMC. When the CDU message disappears, the route has been loaded successfully. Go to the departure and arrivals page and select the SID that we chose earlier. We're taking off from runway 25 on the Pikes 9 departure with the Alamosa transition. We'll be landing in Phoenix on runway 26. Select the ILS 26, Eagle 6 arrival, and the Gallup transition. We can now check the route on the navigation display. Select the plan mode on the EFIS and increase the range. We can now step through the route on the legs page to check for any discontinuities.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you? I'm doing good.
When you're happy with the route, select the EFIS mode to map and the range back to 10. Go back to the route page on the CDU and activate the route, then execute. Active Sky has automatically generated winds aloft data for us, and the CDU message indicates that we can load this data to the FMC. Go to the FMC comms page and click the route data LSK. Load the wind data and then execute. We'll also receive descent forecast data. Load this via FMC comms and descent forecast. Then click load. No need to execute this. Cruise and wait for the generator control is on. They should be back from the walk around and they can verify the information you just entered. In the meantime, we can continue with the captain's cockpit preparation. Let's go back up to the left overhead panel. EECs are normal, left and right utility lights are on, and the standby power is auto. Generator control is on, and the gen drive disconnect switches are guarded. The hydraulic system fault and pump pressure lights should be on, demand selectors off, and finally the engine pump switches should all be on. We'll now move across the bottom edge of the overhead from left to right and set any lighting as desired. For the purposes of this video, I'll turn on the glare shield floodlights and the dome light. We'll leave the center light panel as it is and double check that the nav light is on as the aircraft is powered. We'll right click and hold the indicator lights test switch and take a quick look around the cockpit to make sure everything is lit up. Go back to the switch and left click once to turn it out of the test position. We'll now check the ICAS engine page. Oil quantity should be more than 18 quarts. Now click the stat page and check that the hydraulic fluid quantity is more than 0.74 and the passenger and crew oxygen pressure is more than 1650 psi. Now we'll perform the fire overheat test. We'll open the upper ICAS page to see the fire test messages. Click and hold the fire overheat button, an alarm will sound and you'll see various warning lights and the test in progress message. When the fire test pass message displays on the upper ICAS page, we can release the test button and close the window. Arm the emergency lights and close the guard. Observer audio is normal, interphone is off, and the fuel transfer main 1 and 4 is off. Don't confuse this with the fuel crossfeed buttons on the fuel panel. We'll talk about those later. The engine fire and APU handles should be in the in position with no lights. The cargo fire panel should also display no lights. Engine start switches are all in, standby ignition normal, continuous ignition is off, and we can leave the auto ignition switch on both. In the real world, you'd select the auto ignition switch to 1 for odd numbered flights and 2 for even numbered flights. This is done to save wear and tear on the ignition switches. Fuel jettison selector switch is off together with both left and right nozzles. On the fuel panel, all boost pumps are off, anti-ice is set to auto, both wipers are off, and both window heat switches are on. Next, we'll make our way up the right hand column. Engine bleed air is on with no sysfault lights. APU bleed is on with no valve light. Left and right isolation switches are both on, as we can see from the illuminated flow bar. We know from the METAR that the outside air temperature is below 20 degrees, so we'll turn one pack to normal. Above 20 degrees, we turn 2 packs to normal. Equipment cooling is normal, high flow and pack reset are off, and the gasper is on. The gaspers are those small adjustable air outlets above the passenger seats. Alt zone reset is off, upper and lower recirculation fans are on, aft cargo heat is off, and passenger and flight deck temperature are both auto. Now the pressurization panel. We can confirm that the landing altitude is set to auto by taking a look at the upper ICAS page. Pushing the switch on the panel toggles this between manual and auto. Auto uses the data from the FMC, so you'll generally want to keep this set to auto. However, the 747 FCOM states that if your destination airport elevation is between 8,000 and 10,000 feet, you should set this to manual and dial in 8,000 feet. Then, before the descent, set it back to auto. The manual outflow valve selectors are both off, and the valve indicators are pointing to open. Finally, the passenger oxygen switch is guarded, and the upper and lower yaw dampers are on. We'll now head down to the glare shield and make our way from left to right. Set your lighting options as desired, then move on to the EFAS control unit. Here is where we set the various modes for the primary flight display and the navigation display. Set the mode to map and the range selector between 10 and 40 for departure. The various toggle switches and radio navigation aid switches can be set as desired. Now would be a good time to listen to the ATIS at Denver. Head down to the radio panel and dial in the ATIS frequency from the chart. Don't forget to activate the channel to listen to it. We'll enter the current QNH using the barrel selector. Moving on to the MCP, turn both flight directors on. Some pilots leave the auto throttle off until entering the runway, but we'll leave it on armed here. We'll also go ahead and arm LNAV and VNAV. IAS max selector set to V2 speed.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you? I'm doing good.
Set the heading selector to the takeoff runway heading. You'd set the altitude selector to your initial cleared altitude or the first restriction on the SID. We're not using ATC today, so we'll set our cruise altitude of flight level 400. Finally, double check the autopilot disengage bar is up. Now we'll do a quick oxygen test and scan left to right under the glare shield.
How are you? I'm doing good.
Set all your instrument sources and CRT selectors as required. Alternate gear extend switches and ground proximity switches should all be off with no lights. Speed brake is down, throttles are closed, and thrust reverse levers are down. Fuel control switches are cut off, and stabilizer trim cutouts are set to auto. At the back of the pedestal, we'll turn the no smoking signs to on and the seatbelt signs to auto. Aileron and rudder trim should be 0 and set the auto brake to RTO. We'll quickly run the transponder test by clicking the test button and looking at the screens. We'll carry out the weather radar test too. Now let's quickly talk about the fuel panel. We can see from the ICAS display that we have just under 38,000 pounds of fuel on board. Only the main tanks contain fuel. Tank 2 contains slightly less fuel as the aft tank is supplying fuel to the APU. Basically, we can follow a rule that some pilots call the 120k rule. If we have less than 120,000 pounds of fuel on board, we need to turn on all main tank pumps and close the 1 and 4 crossfeeds. That's what we'll do now. Turn on all main tank pumps and close the 1 and 4 crossfeeds. If we have more than 120,000 pounds of fuel, turn on all pumps for tanks that contain fuel, turn on the override pumps, and open the 1 and 4 crossfeeds. These two situations cover the whole range of fuel loads from full to minimum fuel. If you have the original fuel system installed via the PMDG equipment settings, you'll have to manage this panel in flight. Now we're ready for pushback. Close the doors in FS actions and arm them.
Due to icing conditions, please stand by for engine start until push completed and brakes set. Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Locking gear.
We're now going to set the hydraulic demand pump selectors. I'll open the ICAS page so you can see the various systems come online. First, set
Locking
number
gear.
4 to aux. We're now going to set the hydraulic demand.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes. Commencing push. Due to icing conditions, please stand by for engine start until push completed and brakes set.
Pump selectors. I'll open the ICAS page so you can see the various systems come online. First, set number 4 to aux, as this provides hydraulic power for the parking brake. Then, set 1, 2 and 3 to auto. We'll make sure that only one pack is on for engine start, which it is, and set the parking brake. Now we perform the pre-flight checklist, get clearance from ATC, and go over the departure brief with the first officer. This part is important. We need to make sure we have power once we remove the chocks and begin the pushback. The APU is supplying power at the moment, but if we were running on ground power before this point, we'd need to start the APU and select it before we disconnect the ground power. We'll turn the beacon to both and remove the chocks, which would automatically disconnect the ground power if it was connected. Here we perform the before start checklist, and when that's complete, we can call GSX to perform the pushback.
Set parking brakes.
And ground cockpit, we're ready for pushback. Locking gear. Departure check completed, Captain. Bypass pin inserted. And release parking brakes, sir. Commencing the push, Captain. Start engines at your discretion.
Once the parking brake is released and the pushback begins,
Unlocking
we'll
gear.
start the engines. We'll do 4 and 3 together, then 2 and 1. Make sure your
Tow
ICAS
truck
is set to
disconnected.
engines so
Bypass
we
pin
can monitor
removed.
the startup. Pull the start switches for engines 4 and 3, then set the fuel control levers 4 and 3 to run.
Left is clear. Right is clear. Clear to start engines.
When engines have started to stabilise, you'll hear the click of the start switches returning to their in position. Repeat the procedure for engines 2 and 1. brake set, we can switch off the APU, set the number 4 hydraulic pump to auto, turn the aft cargo heat on together with all the packs. Hit the recall button on the iCast to make sure there are no hidden messages for us. We'll set the flaps to our takeoff configuration of 10. While the flaps are extending, we can check the flight controls are all functioning on the stat page. Now we'll clear the lower iCast display and set the stabilizer trim to the value on the takeoff ref page. At this point, we'll complete the before taxi checklist and then set the transponder to TARA. Turn off all the flight deck lighting we had on earlier. Taxi light on, check we're clear on the left, and finally release the parking brake and begin taxiing to the runway.
On runway 34, left.
Airspeed alive. Knots.
range now is pretty good. So as long as it says path, then we're on the path and everyone's happy. If that changes to another mode, then we've got to think about intervening and doing something.
And in the 777,
So we can see now the green arc there. That's where the aeroplane thinks it's going to be if we maintain our kind of speed trajectory we're doing.
everything that we're doing now is coming back up.
You spend more time in Hawaii than I have.
2,500.
No, there's not much sightseeing going on. If you want to sightsee, then
get on a ship.
take the bus.
Right.
All right, so there's Lanai, and then we're looking good for KT at 5,000. I hate to say it, so far so good. Apart from the speed now, it's crept up a little bit. That's one thing that I am seeing. We've got a bit of tailwind here as well, I can see. We've got 26 knots up the tail, which is not a lot, but that's not helping things.
Maybe the legislation can make sure that we have maybe that's the departure. If we had to go around, we could just back out and hold
So that's what we can see.
That's what you can see now. Yeah, that's why it's a bit confusing.
There we go. There you go. So if you're wondering what this funny little thing is over here, and this is the go around section that we're a little bit about where we want to get the gear down on it. Are we going to use LNAV around the corner? Cut the pin time around the corner from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're still on the LNAV portion of this line. So that's what we're going to do. And you look at the chart, you can see that it's lanai, and then it's cant, and then we're just going to fly down the back. So at some point in time, we will on
So the trick with this, if we get too high and too fast with this, then we're in the way. Just put a little bit of brakes on.
So again, if you're looking at the chart, it says PP, the minimum altitude of PP is 5,000, so that's why we're going to 35,000. When we're approaching PP, then we would clear
So there's a volcano to the left, there's a volcano to the right, and we're going to flood through the one of those two. Right.
Air America 229 Heavy, descend and maintain 3,000. Contact tower on 118.7. See ya.
At this point, we just get short. Right, everything.
So we're just going to get it down there.
Look through it, down. And there's plenty of time.
One speed.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going wind hit, but we have been bumped around a little bit, aren't we? That's pretty typical of approaching. It's bumpy, winds, variable. Always nice to hit smoke status active. So this is the power station, which is driving. Very quickly, this is a pretty short runway, so we're not going to mess about. We've got to roll down to the end. This is the stuff that we looked at around. We're going to roll down to the end.
Yeah, as I talked about, reverse high speed was bad.
Air America 229 Heavy, winds out of the east at 10 knots, runway 02, clear to land.
Okay, bridging 02. Do that. Okay. There we go. I'll take the other part out by the barrel, please.
Too high, too high. Approaching 3, 4, left. Unstable, unstable. Long landing, long landing.
30, 20, 10.
That's the hardest thing you ever do in a 7. Like Honolulu and Allen. Get it successful. You did. I just watched.
America 229, Vicky left, heavy off into the ramp and clear to cross runway 23.
We're going to roll down to the end. Yes. Yeah, because these are intersecting runway. So am I right in thinking that 777 pilots are reversed to shots everywhere where tell that to other people? And this is the turn off, so I'm trying to remember what we said, which is get the line in the middle of the window and then make the turn. Is that a good idea?
Yep.
Because otherwise we're turning it all off the top. And she's quite clever in that she knows we're about to cross the runway as well. Yeah. just yeah. Auto brake, flight director, everything else, that can all wait on it. None of that's important.